A very good morning to all our friends over here. And it's wonderful to have with us uh, Professor Loretta Browning, who would be talking to us today on the theme of your power over your happy brain chemicals. And we are really excited to hear her uh, talk. However, before we begin that, I would like to briefly introduce Professor Browning to all of you. Professor Browning is the author of Habits of a Happy Brain, retain your brain to boost your serotonin, dopamine, oxytocin, and endorphin levels. She founded the Ina Mama Institute to help people build new neural pathways to turn on their happy chemicals in new ways. As professor of management at California State University and a mom, Loretta was not convinced by prevailing theories of human motivation. While researching alternatives, she uncovered the brain chemistry we share with animals. She learned that each happy chemical evolved to motivate a specific survival behavior, not to make you feel good all the time for no reason. Then everything made sense, and she began creating resources to spread this knowledge: books, videos, blogs, podcasts, infographics, slideshows, social media, and training program. Loretta's work has helped thousands of people make peace with their inner with the animal inside. Her work has been translated into Spanish, Russian, Chinese, Arabic, French, Turkish, and German. She has been quoted in Forbes, NPR, and the Wall Street Journal, Fox Time, NBC, Psychology Today, and Cosmopolitan. And a podcast, The Happy Brain, is available, and she has been a guest on many podcasts, including Almost 30, James Altucher, Brainfluence, and many others. So now over to Professor Browning to initiate her talk. Thank you very much.
Hi, thanks so much for joining us today. It's such a pleasure to be with you, and I wish I could be there in person, but hopefully someday soon. So I look forward to hearing your questions at the end. The information I'm presenting is not what you hear in an ordinary psychology or neuroscience study in academia. As you heard, I left academia after teaching for 25 years and did some original research, mostly focused around learning from monkeys. And that's why I'm always so excited whenever I can interact with monkeys. So I'm going to share my screen now. Excuse me. Okay. Your power over your happy brain chemicals. The reason we're not aware of this power is because we have two brains: the verbal conscious brain that we're so aware of, and the mammal brain, which we've inherited from earlier mammals, which cannot process language. So that's why the two brains have trouble talking to each other. But the animal part of the brain controls our chemicals, and our chemicals create strong feelings that overwhelm sometimes our understanding of what's going on around them. And we can understand better how they work by knowing how they work in monkeys. So let's start. You were born with billions of neurons, but very few connections between them. We don't hear much about this. Today, things are often reduced to genes versus society. But the reality is that we have all these billions of neurons, but they're not connected when we're born. And every time you have an interaction with the world around you, a connection builds. And finally, you build a whole network of connections. and you use the connections you have because they're so efficient. We're all in the same boat with having to use the connections we built when we were young, because that's how our brain is designed to work. Each time something felt good or bad, your brain made a connection. So today we're going to focus on the good part, but of course the bad feelings wired our brain very much, and I have a number of books and talks about that. So we all get wired to feel good in ways that felt good before. Just want to check that you're seeing my slides, right? Because
Yes.
Yeah, okay, good. Because in the past I've gone on when they were not visible. Okay. Good feelings come from brain chemicals inherited from earlier animals. So it's amazing. These good feelings come from dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin, and monkeys have the same happy chemicals than we have. Even dogs and cats, same chemicals. Even frogs, even in some cases, almost the same in bacteria and plants. Chemicals that trigger action, trigger survival behavior, not conscious thought, but an impulse to act to meet needs or an impulse to withdraw to protect yourself. And that's what our body and brain are doing all the time. We're always either having an impulse to go forward, to act to meet your needs, or to withdraw to protect yourself. These chemicals evolved to do a job, not to flow all the time for no reason. Now, it would be great if our happy chemicals flowed all the time for no reason, but that's not what they're designed to do. They're designed to do a job, to reward you for action that promotes your survival. And we get the impression on the internet and in much of education, in the medical view, that our happy chemicals are supposed to be on all the time. And I think this is just false, and I'm trying as hard as I can to change it. But of course, I'm just one little person. Now, when you know how these chemicals work in a state of nature, it's easier to turn them on in your life today. So we're going to talk about the physical impulse that each one of the happy chemicals creates so that we can understand them when we're feeling them and also when we see them in other people. And again, the value of this is to know that they're not supposed to be on all the time and that nothing is wrong with you if they're not on all the time and nobody else is getting them all the time. So I found it very rewarding and relaxing to know this, and I hope you find that too. It's still hard to manage our happy chemicals even when we understand them, because our brain evolved to promote survival, not to make you happy. So again, it would be nice if that happiness was your natural default state, but it's not our natural default state. Our natural default state is to sort of be alert for opportunities to survive. And survive has a funny definition in our animal brain, which is very relevant to reproducing our genes and keeping our genes alive. And although we don't consciously think this is what our brain rewards. So let's think about, why is this hard for everyone? First, happy chemicals turn on in short spurts. So you always have to do more to get more. Now, this is not the way I want it to be, or the way anyone wants it to be, or the way we think it should be, but this is how the brain works. So whenever you take action to meet a need, that chemical turns on to reward you. It feels good, but then once you've already taken the action, the need is met, then the chemical stops. So a simple example would be if you imagine our ancestors and they need water and they see water in the distance and they're so tired, but they keep walking. Once they get to the water, they're so happy, but then the feeling stops. because now they're back to neutral. So then they can look around for the next way to meet their survival needs. If you were happy forever about finding the same bit of water, then your brain wouldn't be doing its job of motivating your next action. Okay? Second reason why this is hard. Your mammal brain cares about the survival of your genes. Now, we are not consciously focused on the survival of our genes, and animals are not even aware of genes, but the brain rewards you for doing things that are good for your genes because natural selection built the brain, and a brain that feels good about survival action is going to take more survival action. So we'll see more examples of that soon. Excuse me. Number 3, our happy chemicals are controlled by neural pathways built from past experience. So we are not consciously aware of our neural pathways, but you can think about our chemicals as paving on the pathways. So whatever triggers your chemicals paves a pathway to motivate you to repeat that behavior, whether it's something that feels good or protects you from harm. You're always trying to repeat that because that's the way our brain is designed to work. That's how monkeys learn to survive without having textbooks or even language to teach their children. They learn by wiring in behaviors that work. And it's easy to see how people do that too if you think back to the first time that you felt good about this or the first time you felt bad about that. You'll see that it's a real physical pathway in your brain, and you're still using that pathway today, like everyone. Whatever turned on your chemicals in the past built the pathways that turn them on today. So we keep trying to stimulate good feelings with the pathways we have. Sometimes that gets us into trouble, and we repeat behaviors that are not good for us. So we want to rewire ourselves. And that's what most of my books are about and my videos and things. But here I'm not really emphasizing the fact that you should change your wiring, because I think self-acceptance is very important. So that's really the first step. So it's understanding how we got wired by our happy chemicals. And then if that wiring motivates you to repeat a behavior that you don't like, you can learn to build new wiring. So let's see what triggers a young mammal's happy chemicals and how you could build new pathways to trigger them in new ways. So first, dopamine. It's the great feeling that a reward is at hand. So when a monkey wakes up in the morning, it's hungry, but it doesn't have a refrigerator or a supermarket, so it has to find its own food. So it looks around, and when it sees something good to eat, its dopamine turns on, and that gets the monkey's attention and says, wow, this is good for you. This will meet your needs. And that motivates the monkey to climb toward that fruit. But once the monkey gets the fruit, the dopamine stops because it has already done its job. And you can see how that works in our daily life. You get excited about something that you think will meet your needs, but it doesn't make you happy forever, which is why we're always looking for the next thing. So dopamine releases energy for the chase. That's why it feels good. It releases that reserve tank of energy. And before I talked about our ancestors looking for water, maybe they were hungry and they had to look for food and they had no energy left and they would not survive. And dopamine gives you that last bit of energy to climb the last bit of the top of the mountain so you can reach your goal. And that's why it feels good. But in the modern world, where food is more accessible and water is more accessible, that's why we're always looking for ways to stimulate our dopamine for the next project, for the next excitement. The good feeling of dopamine motivates you to take steps that meet a need. So today in the media, we hear a lot of the bad side of dopamine, but let's start with the good side of dopamine. Dopamine motivates you to take action. So for example, let's say you've been home alone for a long time and you think, I should plan a party, or I should learn a new skill, or I should plan a video conference. And you take that first step and dopamine makes it feel good, and that motivates you to take the next step. Dopamine droops once you get the reward until you set your sights on another reward. So again, this is how our brain works. It's how our ancestors survived. And there are, of course, harmful ways to use this, where a person, for example, eats something when they're not hungry, and then in a few minutes they want to eat more and more. But there are also healthy ways to manage this when you understand the impulse. Neurons connect when dopamine flows, which wires you to expect a good feeling when you see things that stimulated it before. A simple example would be, let's take a person who smokes cigarettes, and they would like to smoke them all the time, but they try to limit. But when they get the idea, oh, I'm going to have a cigarette, and they have to go outside. So the minute they decide, I'm going to have a cigarette and start walking outside, their dopamine is already flowing. It's that anticipation. So whatever is your habit, it's easy for us to laugh at people who smoke, but everyone has that dopamine habit of the thing that gets you excited. If you plan a party for 1 month from now, you could be excited for the whole month. And then after the party, your dopamine droops and you have to plan something else. So let's move on to oxytocin, the next happy chemical. It's often called the love chemical or the bonding hormone. Now, you have probably seen pictures of monkeys grooming each other's fur, and that looks very nice and sweet, and everyone thinks that monkeys are happy all the time and support each other and nice to each other all the time. But people who have seen real animals in real situations know that animals are not nice to each other all the time, and they're not happy all the time, which is one reason why it's so valuable when you find another monkey who you trust to come close enough to clean your fur. And I clean your fur, and I hope that you will clean my fur. But in the monkey world, many times, if I clean your fur, you will not clean my fur, but you will do something else for me. Like if we are attacked, maybe you will protect me. So in the monkey world, there's always an exchange, and that builds bonds. And oxytocin is the good feeling that I expect you to protect me, and I can offer protection to you in the hope that you will protect me. And that's how the animal brain works, and it's easy to see how humans do this. Oxytocin creates the feeling that it's safe to lower your guard. So when you are with a group that you trust, when you are with a group that you trust and that you like, then you feel safe. You say, oh, I can relax because these people are around me. You choose which people make you feel safe. But how do you choose that? With neural pathways built from whatever made you feel safe in your past. So everyone has their own example, and everyone does it with real physical pathways built when they were young, because when we're young, our neuroplasticity is high. We build those roads in our brain easily. And that's why, without consciously intending to, we're so heavily influenced by the social experiences we had when we were young, including who I trust and who I don't trust. And you may know the feeling of somebody that you meet reminds you of someone you knew in the past, or maybe the music that was playing when people you knew in the past, or the food that you ate with people you knew in the past, or the activities you participated in. So we all have that. And in the animal world, we call it following the herd. So
sorry, the screen share went off.
Yes, okay. I decided to just shut it off for a minute, and I'll turn it back on, but thank you. Because I get bored looking at slides myself. So we're following, so we can see how other people like to follow the herd and feel safe when they're with the herd. And sometimes we have a bad impression about that. And sometimes we don't like to follow the herd. We want our independence. We don't like pressure to follow the herd. But then when you leave the herd, your oxytocin falls and you don't feel safe. So that's the challenge, that we want all of the happy chemicals. And when you get one, then sometimes you lose another. So I want my independence so I can run to the green pasture and have more dopamine, but then I lose the oxytocin of feeling protected by people that I trust. So there's no easy answers, and that's why I keep writing another book about this. But I also have a lot of videos. If you don't like to read books, I have a lot of videos and podcasts. So oxytocin is stimulated by trust, touch, birth, and sex. And the important one is trust, because in the animal world, if you trust the wrong monkey, they can bite you and kill you in a second. So you don't let anyone close enough to touch your fur unless you already trust them. So trust is a real physical pathway in your brain built by the oxytocin of your past. But it's still hard because sometimes you trust someone and then they disappoint you. So a simple example is at work, right? So you think, I'm going to be very nice to this person, and then they will give me a promotion. But then they don't give you a promotion. So then you're frustrated. So that triggers your cortisol, your stress chemical. And then you build a pain pathway. And now it's hard to trust anyone who reminds you of that boss. Okay? And now remember your first love when you were a teenager. So you trusted someone and then they disappointed you. So every one of us has trust pathways and disappointment pathways. And so we're all trying to find oxytocin in a way that works. Oh, also, when you trust, when you trust someone and they disappoint you, then you have that complicated decision. Who do I trust now? If I want to keep looking for the same pattern because it's a real pathway in your brain, but I also want to avoid that pattern because I got disappointed in my past. So now I don't know what to do. I'm all confused. And this is a very common human experience. So our brain evolved to make careful decisions about when to turn on the oxytocin because trusting everyone would not promote survival. We did this already. So oxytocin is soon metabolized. So you always have to keep stimulating it to keep enjoying that nice, safe feeling. For example, if you're in a group and the group has an activity like this meeting, then the group has a good feeling because they had some sharing together. but that oxytocin is processed by your body and it's gone. The good feeling doesn't last. And that's why we're looking for more oxytocin. So you wake up the next morning and you start hoping for another shared interaction with a group that you trust. And this is how our ancestors survived. They always had to look for, where is the group? I don't want to get separated from the group. So let's move on to serotonin, which is the pleasure of social dominance. Now, this is very uncomfortable and hard for people to accept, but studies of animals have shown that animals have a lot of conflict and competition, and the animal who prevails in a competition is rewarded with a little bit of serotonin, and it feels great. So you could say, and the example would be if you're playing a game of tennis with your friend and you win and you feel good. Doesn't mean you don't like your friend or you want to hurt them, but winning feels good. And you may say that we should not feel that way or we should not look for that, but we have inherited a brain that rewards you with the good feeling of serotonin when you come out a little bit ahead. We call it social dominance, social importance, and I learned a lot about this from nature videos, and a lot was written about it in the past century, but today we don't hear about it at all because it sounds not nice. So that's why I left academia, so I could follow the truth instead of just what sounds nice. So serotonin is not aggression. It's the calm sense that I will get the banana. Now, you may say that it's crude or cruel to want that banana for yourself, but a little monkey will starve to death if it never grabs a banana. But if it grabs a banana next to a stronger individual, it will get bitten. So that leaves it with a terrible choice. And it has to find an opportunity to grab a banana in order to survive. Now, in the human world, if you grab too much, people will not want to have you in their group. So just like this monkey, you have to look for safe and acceptable ways to reach for resources, to reach for the next step to meet your needs in a way that is not hurting those around you, but you still want to stimulate your serotonin. Serotonin is the mammal brain signal that it is safe to assert yourself to meet your needs. This feels good, so we want to stimulate it again and again. So serotonin is soon reabsorbed, so we're always looking for a way to stimulate more. This is frustrating. It's a dilemma, but everyone has the same dilemma. I think that's fascinating and very useful to know. It's easy to see that other people have this urge for social importance, but it's hard to see in yourself. And there are so many ways to seek this. And hopefully, as we mature, we learn better and better ways to do that. Finally, endorphin is euphoria that masks pain. Endorphin is only stimulated by real physical pain. And we are not designed to inflict pain on ourselves. We are designed for survival. And that means we only get endorphin when we need it, when we're hurt. And animals only get it when they're hurt because endorphin is the body's endogenous morphine. It's an opioid and it masks pain with a good feeling so that the animal can act to protect itself or to run. And it is not meant for partying. It's meant for emergencies only. So I teach people how to seek the other chemicals, but I think we are not meant to seek endorphin. We're meant to just have it for emergencies. However, people do seek it because it feels so good. So the important thing to know is that laughing.
5 minutes to go.
Thank you. The important thing to know is that laughing stimulates a little bit of it. So the brain built by natural selection rewards you with a good feeling when you do things that promote survival. This gets confusing in daily life because our brain defines survival in quirky ways. We don't consciously choose to use those old pathways, but the electricity in your brain flows like water in a storm, finding the paths of least resistance. And the paths you built before you were 8 years old and during puberty are the superhighways of your brain, because that's when you had a lot of myelin, which is the chemical that insulates your neurons and makes them super efficient. So whatever you do with your myelinated neurons feels natural and normal and easy, and that's why it's hard to change. When you change, it feels like you're doing something wrong. It even feels like you're doing something dangerous. Fortunately, you can build new pathways to turn on your happy chemicals in new ways. Repetition is what it takes after your myelin years are over. So choose a new behavior or thought pattern and repeat it. To build a new dopamine circuit, focus on a goal and take a small step each day. To build a new oxytocin circuit, take a small step towards social trust each day. To build a new serotonin circuit, take a small step towards social importance each day. A small step is enough to trigger your chemical. You only get a little and soon it's gone, but then you could take another small step, and with repetition, you build a new pathway. So then you're not always repeating your old behavior because you've chosen a new strategy to get that chemical. It's hard. It is hard because when you blaze a new trail through your jungle of neurons, it's a lot of work. That means how to activate neurons that are not already connected. It takes so much work that you can't do anything else. You have to stop whatever else you're doing in order to activate those new neural pathways. And then after all that work, the jungle grows back and you have to do the work again tomorrow, cutting that new trail through your jungle. But if you do it every day, you will build a new pathway. It gets established in your brain, and then it becomes easy, natural, and normal to repeat the new behavior or the new thought pattern. You will give your electricity a new place to flow, and you will build a pathway that expects to feel good. So here is my website with a lot more information about how to do this. I have a lot of books, and everything else is free. I have podcasts, videos, infographics, a training program, a lot of slideshows, including this one, and a free 5-day Happy Chemical Jumpstart, which explains each of the chemicals in one email a day for 5 days if you put your email in the box. And this is my introductory book. This is my introductory book, Habits of the Happy Brain, Retrain Your Brain to Boost Your Serotonin, Dopamine, Oxytocin, and Endorphin. And this is my book, Tame Your Anxiety, Rewiring Your Brain for Happiness. So I said this, I didn't talk today about the unhappy chemicals, but that's what this one is about. The Science of Positivity, Stop Negative Thought Patterns by Changing Your Brain Chemistry. This book is about how to focus on the positive, even if the rest of the herd is negative. And if you would like to contact me, here's my email. And thank you so much for your attention. And now I'm happy to hear your questions.
Thank you very much, Professor Browning, for this wonderful talk. We constantly hear talks about the happy chemicals, but the way you kind of narrated in the form of almost a story the actual role they play, it became extremely clear for all of us to understand what they are doing to us, and the deep implication they have for our lives. So thank you very much, and we look forward to questions. Some of the students have started sharing questions in the chat box, but it would be nice if you can use your microphones and ask the questions to Professor Browning directly. Otherwise, I can read them out.
So, ma'am, thank you for the presentation. I have a two-part question, basically. Wait, let me start the video once. The first part of my question is, are those chemical reward pathways depends on the individuals, or is there a commonality between them? First one. Should I ask the second one again?
No, let's start with the first one.
Okay.
They're very individual. And I just wrote a workbook to help people track down their individual pathways. It's called 14 Days to Sustainable Happiness.
Okay.
But a simple example, I use my own example, that I noticed that I get happy when I have to choose colors. Like if you show me something and say, what color do you want? I get excited about that. Now, that's not logical, and that's not a verbal thing that anybody consciously taught me, but I remembered experiences when I was young where I had an opportunity to choose colors, and I had very little choice in my life. And so that was like a big deal. So everyone could think about their own personal experience. Whatever makes you happy today, I have to tell you that my car is orange. And I love, whenever I look at my car, it makes me happy. And it's free. It doesn't cost anything to have an orange car. I don't know why everyone doesn't do it. So whatever makes you happy today, you can think of examples from when you were young of when that first started. And if it's hard to do in yourself, ask other people. Find when you notice a friend gets happy about something, ask them about the earliest experience they can remember. If they can find one example when they were a teenager and another example before age 8, you'll see that it's really learned from experience.
Okay, the second part of the question is, once you said that we need to continuously produce happy chemicals, that reminded me of an example of, say, a group of fireflies burning in the forest. You know, after a while, they synchronize and they make a very synchronized movement of burning their, they're moving in a synchronized way. I thought whether our society also works in a very synchronized way where we always start producing happy chemicals one after the other. And when I try to change that, I try to change my neural pathways, whether that would disrupt that synchronization of the society. I say this because, say you have seen a lot of people vandalizing just out of euphoria. That I'm happy about something, I'm going to hit you, or I'm going to disrupt, I'll rob a shop just because I'm euphoric.
I don't think they're robbing.
I'm going to. This is an extreme example. I mean, we have seen
the person who's robbing the shop when they're euphoric. Yeah. Although you're thinking that they are disrupting society, they are doing it with a group of people, and that action is bonding them to the group. So they have persuaded themselves that society is against them, except for their little herd. So the more they do things that bond them to their own herd, the more they feel safe. Now, okay, this is a big, long subject, but one thing we need to know about it, it's in all of my books, it's called mirror neurons. So our brains are designed to mirror others when others get a reward or a threat. And we want to avoid the threat. When you see someone else get harmed, you say, oh, I don't want that. When you see someone else get a banana, you say, oh, how did he get that? I want to get that too. So you may be told by your group leaders that you must mirror everything the group does, or else it's your fault that you will mess up the group. But all through human history, groups evolve. And the people who are telling you that you must follow the group every minute, they may not be following the group every minute. They may be telling you what's good for them because they want you to follow them, because that promotes their survival. So we each have our own brain, and our brain is evolved to make decisions about which group to follow when, and when to not follow anyone. And I was so fascinated to learn how animals do this. Even herd animals are constantly making decisions about when to follow. A great example is when you see a herd of animals jump over a river or jump into a river. They have to make very complex decisions, because if they jump too soon, they get kicked by the guy in front of them. But if they jump too late, they get kicked by the guy behind them. So we have inherited a brain that is navigating for your own interests in every minute. And you may have been told that it's taboo to focus on your own interests. I was certainly told that. So I understand that. And that's why as I said, that's why I left academia. Okay, by the way, I wanted to say that if a lot of my readers of my weekly newsletter I invited my readers of my weekly newsletter. So if any of them are here, I'd love to hear from you in the chat, and happy to hear your questions too. So Mr. Patnick, do you want to decide about the next question?
I'll just quickly read out the questions because we have only 3 to 4 minutes left. Gokul Muttuji asks, can you let us know how to stop comparing ourselves with others, which I guess is the topic of your latest book, Status Games?
Yes, thank you. So we cannot stop comparing ourselves to others, because that's what the mammal brain does. What we can do is become conscious of the fact that we're doing it, and then manage it in new ways instead of just managing it in the way that we did in the past. So a simple example would be, if you grew up and you were like the younger brother or sister, and you always felt like you were the little monkey and everybody was stronger than you, and you wired yourself to believe, oh, I'm always weaker than all the other monkeys. And another person maybe grew up, they were the only child and their parent treated them like they were the king of the world. But then when they go out into the world, they realize that they're not the king of the world. So every one of us has the constant impulse to compare and has frustrations. No matter how you compare, it's frustrating. And the habit today is to blame society for your social comparisons. But in my new book, Status Games, I explain how people have done this all throughout history. And famous people who you think maybe were very accomplished, but they suffered terribly from status games in their life. And you can free yourself from that suffering by understanding how your brain is doing it, and then creating a new pathway that allows you to feel your own strength to put yourself up without putting other people down. To put yourself up without putting other people down. Yes, okay, and can I just quickly answer, how can one happy chemical override another? Just to say in 1 minute, they compete with each other. So some people, they're very good at one of them, and so they only focus on that. But you'd really be better off learning about all of them instead of just focusing on the one you're good at. But when you leave the one you're good at, then you fear, what am I going to do without that source of happiness, while you're learning about the new one? And this is important to me because I live in a place where many people exercise too much. They think it's the only way to be happy, and they create pain and distress in their body by doing that, because they haven't learned about the other happy chemicals. Okay.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the very wonderful and enlightening talk. And we are all extremely thankful to you for your sparing us this valuable time. And special thanks to Sandhuji for connecting you with us. we will be in touch with you in the future, and we will hopefully get more to know about happy chemicals and how to use them. Thank you. Over
Great.
to Sankar to make announcements about the other things.
Okay, so we will end the session now. Thank you, ma'am, for this very intriguing session. And we will move on to the two parallel sessions we have from it has already started. Two parallel sessions, session A and session B. It has already started, and we will come back in this main session at 11 o'clock. We have two lectures. One from Professor Arindam Chakraborty and the other from Professor Aurobindo Raut Rai. Thank you. Thank you all. I am closing this session now.